first of all, welcome everybody to the October PBCS update session here, brought to you by eCapital Advisors. For those of you who are new on the call, just a quick refresher or introduction to eCapital as a whole here. We are an Oracle Gold partner in Cloud Standard. We are based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and have a strong focus on business analytics and advisory services type initiatives here. There's kind of our NASCAR slide giving you a preview of some of the organizations that we have worked with in the past, through successful projects. And myself speaking right now, I am Ryan Kohler, and I'm here with my colleague Bob Ussett. We are the ones here from eCapital who really put together this material on a monthly basis and do a lot of this testing for you up front so that we can kind of give you a preview of what's coming in each month's release from Oracle. So, as a reminder, again, these PBCS monthly webinars will continue to happen on a monthly basis, and we will stay in sync with Oracle's release schedule. So we'll go through all of the enhancements and different components that are a part of each monthly release, and we will go ahead and test that for you so you're all ready to go. So before we get into the content for today, we'll give a quick intro on just what is PBCS itself. So as a reminder, Oracle PBCS is a subscription-based planning and budgeting solution, built for and deployed on the Oracle Cloud system. It provides a lot of flexibility and best-in-class architecture for planning and reporting, and certainly offers immediate value and greater productivity for your business and organization there. I think some of the nice features that comes with the tool itself are simplified input processes, even some light dashboarding capabilities, which I know some of our clients have found very helpful. And just as a reminder, don't forget about EPBCS, the E really standing for Enterprise, and this is really the one that comes with some of the pre-built modules. So you'll have access to the financials, projects, CapEx, workforce, and just recently strategic modeling. So this is some out-of-the-box functionality that we typically think works well for organizations who are looking to add some business process or potentially define some business process, especially around their capital planning or workforce planning. Where honestly, if you're looking to have a customized model that already follows or is dictated by some of your internal business process, sometimes it makes more sense just to go the standard PBCS for full flexibility. So why don't we go ahead and jump into the new features. So there is our new in October itinerary or table of contents for you. We're going to go through each of these one by one. Just as a reminder, we did get our updates pushed to our test environments on October 6th, and they will all move to production on October 20th. So just as a reminder, anyone that has subscriptions to PBCS or EPBCS, you will continue to have those two different environments, so the test and the production. Obviously the test, we will get these releases first so we can be prepared for when we move these enhancements to production. So a couple of call-outs before I get into the features themselves. I did want to mention the Cloud Customer Connect component, which has been really highlighted a lot recently from Oracle, and is actually in your October release notes as well. So this is kind of Oracle's attempt at creating a community for all of their different cloud products. It will include a lot of detail around release info, upcoming events being in-person or virtual events that Oracle puts on that are all cloud related, as well as a lot of Q&A forums that are driven by some of the top active members themselves. That screenshot that I have on there is just kind of the front page of their Cloud Customer Connect site. So you'll see they really do try to highlight some of the top active members there. You kind of create a profile. I think it's a great way to network within the cloud community, and also kind of learn more about all of the different products. So just wanted to give a plug out there for that. I think it is a great opportunity for those of us who have the cloud products and want to learn more about them and continue to evolve. The other piece that I think Oracle was pushing in this release notes that I do think is very interesting and a productive attempt at some documentation feedback. So there is an email address out there that you can actually send feedback to directly, and you can indicate whether this is inquiring for additional information or potentially providing some feedback on the latest release notes. It sounds like this is a way for us to get some more direct visibility into some of the feedback around the documentation itself. So, you know, a good shift into that customer support angle here, which I think will just lend itself nicely to clients and organizations trying to adopt the tool more and more. So why don't we get into the features now here finally. So the first new feature for October is around a new EPM Automate utility. And specifically a function that comes with that utility. So as we've seen month to month, they're oftentimes rolling out new commands for EPM Automate, but in order to be able to leverage those commands, you really need to download the latest and greatest EPM Automate utility first. So, you know, just as a reminder, you can download that directly from the interface, just like we have in months past. Now, this new version comes with a new command, or I should say an enhanced command. The command itself is the login command, and it actually now accepts Internet Proxy server domain, as well as the username and password for optional parameters. So, you know, we can talk about the technical jargon here all we want, but I think when it comes down to it, you know, basically this is allowing organizations that may have more secured networks to be able to leverage EPM Automate more effectively. So Bob and I kind of walked through this a little bit, and we think it's probably a new customer that drove this enhancement. It was probably because they had just more of a secured network that was running into potentially some firewall issues or things of that nature. So you're basically able to just even define that login connection in more detail now if you need to. I think it's important to point out that if you're already using this command today with your EPM Automate setup and you're having no issues with it, there's no need to change. It's really more of if you're a new customer or a new subscriber and you're running into any issues with some of the standard functionality, you have optional enhancements here to follow. So the next enhancement for the October release is around a new option for simplified data auditing. So data auditing has been around for some time from an on-prem perspective, certainly, but for on the cloud here, they're really starting to engage more with this data auditing process. Now, I will say that in general, when I think of a planning and budgeting application, I think we typically as eCapital try to handle you know, the need for data auditing or the need for data tracking more with a defined security model. And the reason for that is a lot of times with the data auditing, you know, traditionally it would cause a lot of degradation to performance along the way because every click you're doing within the application, anytime you're loading data, anytime you're refreshing data, it's really creating a lot of additional logging. So typically on-prem, you would actually find a lot of performance decreases here. Now, we haven't seen a ton of that yet here in the cloud, so I think, you know, it's certainly an option to explore. But I would question if you need this precise auditing, you know, you may want to look at your security model first, kind of start there, and if you don't think you have things defined enough, you know, that might be a great starting point, and certainly you can evaluate the data auditing options as well. I will say that in the release notes for this month, Oracle actually included like a separate text box on this enhancement itself, and in big bold letters they actually said, you know, a large note that the Simplified Audit interface is going to continue to evolve and is subject to change at any time. You know, and Oracle can kind of, you know, change or add or delete things from this functionality when they see fit. So that kind of tells me up front that maybe they also have some possible concerns around long-term performance impacts of all of their different subscribers using this data auditing. So just something to kind of keep in mind there, but just kind of shedding our own opinions on this data auditing enhancement here. The next piece here in the October release notes is around HsGetValues. So HsGetValues is actually something that's fairly old with Hyperion itself. It's basically kind of an alternative to ad hoc analysis in SmartView that allows you to basically create functions that are all formula driven. The specific enhancement here is really around the ability to leverage HsGetValues with attributes now, which is interesting. I'm honestly surprised that they're even addressing HsGetValues as a whole. We typically push our clients to leverage ad hoc because I truly believe anything that you can do with HsGetValues, you can also accomplish with ad hoc analysis. And then you know that you're really pulling each data point from the database, and you don't have to worry about your entire workbook possibly breaking from some HsGetValue formula errors. So just wanted to, obviously share this information as it is a part of the October release notes. But again, if you are using HsGetValues, please let us know if you need any assistance transferring from HsGetValues to ad hoc analysis. But truly, that is the way to go long term. So we'll move on to the next enhancement here for the release. So this next step here is going to be back to our navigation flows. So we've seen a strong trend lately in a lot of focus on the navigation flows, specifically some of the customization around them, and just recently the option to actually go into other pods or other subscription services and create different cards on your navigation flow to hit them directly. So this enhancement for this month is specifically basically keeping those navigation flow cards in sync between the two subscriptions, so both the source and the target would then look exactly the same, which will help certainly drive consistency, especially in areas where the same users will be accessing both subscriptions. So again, just a lot of focus lately on the navigation flows, which I think is great to see because I think some of the power of PBCS in general is really that concept of that simplified interface. And now that Oracle is really starting to share a focus with jumping back and forth between multiple subscription options, I think this is going to be a powerful piece of functionality moving forward and will only continue to enhance. So this next component is part of the October release notes. This is actually pretty cool, and it seems simple in concept, but I think can actually help drive a lot of more value to the light dashboarding that's available to us in PBCS. So just like you can use valid intersections within your planning application itself, to define the valid combinations between dimensions, you can now leverage those valid intersections in dashboards and specifically in the point of views for dashboards. So depending on the context of how you have your dashboard set up, you will only see those valid intersections on your page drop down. So this is going to really help simplify things and make those dashboards more usable. I think when you think of the concept of data visualization or dashboarding as a whole, if you're not simplifying the reporting options, it's tough to really sell that concept. So I think this will only help that adoption for the dashboarding here within PBCS. This next piece is really more from a development standpoint, so not really end user facing, but if you are leveraging the Reporting Studio tool for financial reporting development, and just as a reminder, we're all using the web-based option there now, obviously. This is really just a change to a member selection menu that allows you to do every single dimension within the same process and kind of click next, as opposed to setting up those drop-down menus individually. It's a pretty minor change here, but certainly add some simplification from a development standpoint. Now these next couple of updates are going to be with some of the formatting that are available in some of the dashboards that are out there. So this first one is also fairly minor, but can certainly help customize some of your different graphs and dashboards here. So you can now control the line weight for each individual chart, where in the past you really could not do that. So again, just some customization options, which will also kind of lead into this next one here. That allows us to actually customize the colors of our dashboards now too. So again, something that on the surface probably appears to be pretty minor, but I think we can all agree that whenever trying to do any dashboarding or nice reporting, it is ideal to kind of use your company's template as far as how you want to present those dashboards or reports. So I think some on the surface kind of smaller updates, but I think actually these will provide some real value here. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Bob, and he's going to walk us through the specific EPBCS updates for the October release.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, so like Ryan was saying at the start of this webinar, the enterprise features, the E of the EPBCS is really around those 4 pre-built models that are available through that, which now technically have really turned into 5, which again is projects, financials, workforce capital, and strategic planning. So for those of us that do not have those enterprise options or do not have the enterprise subscription, these enhancements will not be part of what's going to be going in on Friday. But for those of us that do, this will be important information for us to understand how these models may have changed. So the first one we'll talk about is an enhancement to a business rule that is running in the workforce model. So it's an update to the associate employee business rule that executes, and essentially what it has done is it has made some updates to the logic where it essentially is going to take an employee compensation amount that's being calculated and actually reduce the cost of kind of hiring that person into that role. So, and really the big benefit to having this is whereas previously these two calculations were separate, so this rule used to just focus on associating that employee cost to the new department or work group that they're working in, and there would be a separate rule that would actually reduce the cost that it would, or reduce the expense that it was taking to kind of populate them in that domain. They essentially brought this down into one business rule, so they essentially removed the need to run this calculate compensation business rule that used to be there, and they essentially incorporated it all into this one associated employee. An important call out here is these rules are still fully customizable within your application, so you will have had the opportunity to actually go in and modify this rule however you would have seen fit as an organization. However, if you were to do that, this update would not have been applied to that business rule. So, it's something that's important to keep in mind, not only in this situation, but in any future situations. If we actually are going into these business rules, and you can even see by the screenshot here, you're really able to go in and modify them in many situations. Again, by doing that, we need to remember that you will disable any automatic updates that may be coming through as a future enhancement from Oracle. So the next enhancement from an enterprise subscription is going to be around data import templates. So I know this is something that we've talked about a couple other times this year as they're coming out with this opportunity here. I think Oracle loud and clear earlier this year got the message that it was very difficult for users to understand where they needed to load data to all the various intersections in the applications to get web forms to populate correctly, to get functionality fully up and running in case there are any driver type inputs that would be needed for certain functionality. So back earlier in the year, Oracle introduced this data import templates as a process that you're able to essentially just download from your configure option once your module has been configured in your environment. And essentially what they've done here is they've added more of that for the workforce and the capital models So there's more templates that you're able to download now as they've added more functionality within these models, enhanced existing download templates that are out there currently. But essentially, this is just a great way for us as administrators just have an easy access, it's downloadable, and you can open it up within Excel. And again, just gives us a very easy downloadable template that you can just upload through the simplified interface like it is just a normal data load process. So essentially, summarizing this, they've essentially enhanced their data import templates around the workforce and the capital modules. The next thing here is within that projects out-of-box model. They have added the ability to have a custom dimension in this model. So where previously we were limited within that capability, essentially what's happening now is you're going to be able to create a custom dimension within this model. So an important call out here is it's not going to happen if your module has already been initialized and created. So it could be quite a bit of work around getting this up and running in our environment, because essentially what we're going to need to do to kind of leverage this functionality for those of us that already have this module enabled is it's very likely what we'd have to do is back up this module, technically, well, not even this module, but your entire application, essentially remove that application and almost recreate, whether that be through LCM or kind of walking through a model setup process. So, unfortunately, it doesn't automatically flow through for us as an opportunity to kind of add that dimension, but we do have processes, and eCapital has done this for other types of enhancements that kind of require to be created on the creation of your modeling. So I would highly recommend any of us that have, that project dimension and you want some more functionality around a custom dimension, to kind of reach out and we can walk through a game plan how exactly to implement that. But again, unfortunately, we're not just going to be able to log into that module and kind of be able to leverage this new custom dimension within the model. So a couple more here. So one more here is they now have created a new process within the workforce model that will enable us to validate smart list members that were created in the model. So you actually see down on the bottom right, there's kind of some screenshots here. So in the compensation reporting, on the very far left, there's almost like the different tabs that are available in this. There's a very bottom one where we'll let you actually validate those different smart list values and ensure that they're being used appropriately within different intersections of the application. So, I kind of put another snippet of information from Oracle's documentation as far as how to fix that. So, unfortunately, limitations are apparent with this as well, where it's not going to actually, recommend how you should adjust anything that would have failed this validation, or where why necessarily they would have failed. So there still is definitely going to be some back-end processes that us as administrators will have to follow to fix that. But it is actually a really great tool to help us identify where exactly those intersections are invalid, as historically that has been a pretty complex process to go through, especially as you look into workforce models that are larger in size and you have many intersections. So it does give us a great tool to kind of help us pinpoint where those issues are, but the process that we've went through historically to kind of adjust those values or reassign where those values are input in the system, that's still something that needs to be done manually from administrators from back-end processes. So finally, the last enterprise update that we have available for us as part of this month's release is going to be enabling Groovy scripting within ASO plan types. So Groovy scripting, at the end of the day, is another way that we can write business rules within the application. There's been numerous releases where they've been enhancing Groovy scripting within the planning plan types. So those plan types that are leveraging the web forms and kind of those plan types that leverage our forecasting and budgeting processes as we know them today. We've seen several enhancements around there, but that Groovy scripting language was never available from an ASO plan type, the ASO, the reporting plan type. So they've enabled some of that. So Groovy scripting is typically used frequently to make certain API calls, which can do a number of different things. Pretty much anything you would do from an EPM Automate standpoint, you would now basically have from a Groovy standpoint. So, and again, those would be able to be leveraged through calls that would be made directly to the ASO cube and not just only your planning plan types. So that rounds out all of the new features that are available as part of the October update. We're going to cover some of the support updates, and a lot of these I think all of these are a refresher of what we have before. So again, something we've been talking about for a year, if not more, is going to be the retirement of the standard interface. So again, I know there are still some of us out there that are using the standard interfaces. They're interacting with web forms, business rules, reports, basically everything within the application from a web layer. That is set to be retired at the end of this year in replacement for the simplified interface. So the simplified interface is essentially the view that all the screenshots you'll ever see in this webinar, any future webinars we're going to put together is going to be those screens that you've seen now. So again, it's kind of the cluster card approach that Oracle has moved forward with. But again, it's important to note that you aren't going to lose any functionality. You're really only going to gain functionality when you move to that simplified interface. But again, the navigation and how you open a web form, how you open a report, the clicks are different. Good or bad. They're not good or bad different. They're just technically different places people have to click. So we do think it is important to ensure your organization is ready for that transition from a user training standpoint. I know we're getting very close to the end of the year here where it's no longer going to be supported in the simplified. If you as an organization are needing some help putting together this training, don't hesitate to reach out to either Ryan or myself, and we'd be happy to kind of put together a game plan or even possibly assist in that training that's required from your end user standpoint. So the classic dimension editor is again something that I know we talked about last month. And basically what this is that they are going to be retiring that classic, the dimension editor that can be found from that navigation panel, how you're able to go in and get it from there and you're able to modify your dimensions. It's a very similar look and feel to how it was on-prem, but they are going to retire the ability to adjust your dimensionality from that window in February. So we have a couple more months here, and really this is only going to affect us as administrators. So there's several other ways to update your metadata within the application, whether that be to modify it through SmartView, through the administrator plugin, or whether that be to modify it through editing member properties and things like that through another concept, which looks very similar to the SmartView interface, which is really the screen down in the bottom right. But I think it's important for us to call out so we as administrators fully understand how to make some member property updates or adjust or add members as necessary in the application. Just to be aware that some of those, that screen is going to change. This is a very minor impact overall to us as administrators. The look and feel is very similar. It's really just how you access it is going to be in a slightly different place. So again, that is going to be put into place in February of next year. So the last thing, and this is another one that we've been talking about for over a year now, is the retirement of the reporting desktop. So again, that client that we've used to update our financial reports, there's a desktop version of that. None of us should be using that version at this point. It's full capabilities. Everything we've seen is fully available in the reporting web studio. We should all be leveraging that. And again, at the end of this year, Oracle has been communicating that they are no longer going to enable login through the desktop client. So again, really should be no issues here. There's full capability between both. It's just how you access. And in my personal opinion, I think it's easier to access from that web studio because it's all in one place instead of having to go to your desktop and actually fire up a new client to do that development. So finally, this isn't actually in the release notes here, so but we want to give this information out to those of us that are joining these calls. So what we've actually noticed, and it's hard for us to identify exactly when this issue came into play. We believe it came in with last month's release. What we actually noticed is we noticed an issue with the HSP view dimension. So what this dimension is, not all of us are going to have this, but essentially this dimension is used whenever sandboxing is enabled in your application. So again, what sandboxing is, it's just the ability to kind of on the fly create ad hoc or what if scenarios within your application without replicating all the data in that scenario. So it uses this HSP view dimension to kind of dynamically calculate data between a newly created sandbox dimension, which any users can create, and that base dimension that the sandbox, or I'm sorry, that base scenario that what if capability would be created off of. And essentially what we saw as an issue of part of this is what it had done is it had moved that dimension within the application outline order. So we had noticed that it always put it third in your outline list, which some of us, it may have always been third, depending on how we had set up our hourglass shape outline, which is what we want, which is a large, dense dimension to small, and then small, sparse dimensions to large. But it always moved it to third. So for those of us that may have, disabled that hourglass shape outline that we would have looked to leverage, and so what that had done is it had potential impacts on some of our clients from a calculation runtime standpoint. So when you corrupt that outline shape, that hourglass shape, you can see your runtimes and your performance of retrievals but more specifically business rules can actually be impacted by this. And so it's a really easy fix. At the end of the day, all you really need to do is go back into that, your performance settings and move those dimensions back in the correct order and simply refresh your application. But unfortunately, this is not something that I think any of us would pay close attention to. There was nothing in the release last month that would have technically made us think to look for this. But any of us that have enabled sandboxing, I think it's important for us to go look at our models, ensure this does not happen in our environments, and make the adjustments as necessary. So again, this is not part of the release notes, but this is just something that eCapital is able to identify just based on work that we've been doing on our multiple cloud clients. So with that wraps up our webinar for the updates this month. I want to thank all of you for joining today. We recommend you tune in next month. We try to get this information out to you in 30 to 45 minutes. You can get on with the rest of your work throughout your day. Try to give you that information, and like we just saw today, you never know when you're going to get a little bit of information that's even outside of the release notes like we did with HSPView today. So that, Ryan and I thank you for joining. It doesn't look like we have any questions here today. So with that, we'll end the webinar, and we look forward to seeing everyone on the webinar next month.